Okay, so last week I asked you to do a few things with your post. The first thing I wanted you guys to do is get your image size, the size that you'd usually have a normal Instagram post. Now, I did find this image online, which does explain the image sizes you'd usually want to use depending on what you're using on Instagram. Now, some of the best places to advertise in this day and age are Instagram and TikTok. So it's always important to get your image size correct. Now, if you were to use something like a 1080 by 1080 image, so remember that would mean you'd have 1080 pixels uh, going up horizontally and 180 going vertically as well. So that would keep you a 1-to-1 aspect ratio. When you do create this image and you upload it onto your Instagram page, it will actually obviously reduce it to the size that you need, but having such a high number of pixels would mean the quality of the image is really good. You do have stories which are a bit more portrait, and you also got what Instagram now have known as Reels, which would also use a similar image size. Well, obviously, we're only worried about an image, something that you'd usually see on your main feed. So we should be using something like this. So for me to change the image size, I'd click on File, go down to Page Setup, Custom, and I'll use pixels, and let's use 1080 by 1080. Okay, so that will give me a nice square size. Okay, now bearing in mind this is quite a big image. Let me just check that again. Page setup, pixels 1080 by 1080. Good. So it's always good to zoom out and possibly get the best fit you can. And what that would mean is you can see everything that's going on your page as you create it. What you'd want to start off with is changing your background. Now, there's a number of ways you could do this. You could simply draw a shape around just to go on the back of your image. Or you can also right click and go to background and choose the background you want. Some gradients are also good, and it's always good to also get a custom gradient. Now I need to think if I'm using something which is something to do with a burger, we could think about exactly what color scheme I'd use. So what I would do, this may look good, it may not. So I'm going to very quickly use, let's use a brown there. Let's use the same brown there again. Let's add one in the middle. In fact, let's add two in the middle. Let's add a third one there. Let's make that yellow. Let's make that darker brown. Okay, so I'm just simply removing some of these and just trying to get it similar to the colors I have in my burger. Okay, now, like I said, it may not work out too well, and in this case, it hasn't. So I'm going to get rid of that. But obviously, you can always use trial and error and decide exactly what works really well. In fact, let's see how that looks on top of that. In fact, I may actually just keep that. Okay, it's not always the best idea. Usually, plainer backgrounds are better to use. And what it may be also be a good idea is to then add something else onto your background to bring a bit more focus into it. What you could have also done had you used the shape, you could also change the transparency of the shape to make it a little bit more transparent. So that's another thing we could have done. But as I've already done this in the background, I would then have to go back and do that again on the shape, which will be a little bit time consuming considering the video I'm trying to record. You'd then also think about what image you might want to do. So I'm going to have a quick search for some images. Bearing in mind this is a burger bar, so I may add a picture of the shop. So I did have a quick search online for some, but well, I simply typed in new burger shop, and the best, well, one of the images that I found was probably of a burger, and it would be good to use a burger which works really well. However, I just grabbed one of the first ones which I found, which was this, quite similar to the actual burger I've got in my image. I'm just missing my little sort of slice of onion in that. So I can actually use that. Okay, if I wanted to change the transparency of that, I could simply click on that image. If I wanted to crop it down, I could double click and I could use these little black parts to crop that down. I can head over to format options, the recolor option. If I wanted to change the color of it, that could give you a better sort of effect. In fact, I like this effect. Or you can also change the transparency in adjustments and make that blend in with the background a little bit. Okay, you can play around with the size a bit. Okay, and probably the next most important thing is thinking about your text. What text are you going to put on your image? You'd want to think of this as a hierarchy. What is the first thing you want people to see? And this should be something which will draw you in or draw your viewers in. So I'm going to start off with 30% off. Okay, and as this is something which I want to grab attention, I'm going to make this a lot bigger, and I'm going to try, in fact, match this up with the font I used previously, which I believe was Impact. Do you know what? Let's also use the color which I had used earlier. Okay, let's make that a lot bigger. Let's try 60. Okay, so I've used size 60 there. In fact, let's get even bigger. Let's try 96. Okay, now this is not the best idea to use. The color I've used isn't great. However, changing the positioning of it may improve it. Problem is it's not drawing enough attention. It's not contrasting enough. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try a different color. So let's try black. So that's contrasting a lot better. And I can also, in fact, let's try white. Okay, and that is much better in terms of contrast. Bigger. Okay, 30% off. In fact, I'm going to make that even bigger. Let's try 60, 160. Okay, and that will be something which will draw attention in. Okay, the next thing I want is to think about what information do I want them to look at next. I will then make that possibly a second size. So I have this as the biggest size. I have the second size, which would be the next piece of information I want them to refer to. The next information would be a third size, and so on and so forth. What can I put in the information? I could put another bit of information here. And obviously, I would want to try to use persuasive writing as well, persuasive text. Try our juicy, succulent burgers on our opening day, for example, something along those lines. I want to get that information there. Then the next thing I'd want them to look at is possibly the address, which would be a little bit sort of smaller, possibly at the bottom, and possibly in a fourth size. It could be my terms and conditions. One day only, first 100 customers, these times, etc. Okay, but if we look at that, how contrasting that is and how that draws attention straight away. Okay, so they're the few things we want to look at. What information do we want? How can we make it contrast? How can we make it stand out? Play with the fonts, the styles, the sizes, the colors, etc. And obviously, you have a few ways that you can edit your images as well. Obviously, if you are doing this as a professional, you'd use better software than this. But we are just looking at some of the ideas we can use.